Hello, Dr. Michael Lennox.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day.
Aha, it's great to have you. I love your energy.
Thank you. I love yours as well.
I really appreciate meeting you through Freeman Michaels. It was
Yes, and I did too as well. And I was excited beforehand. And then after meeting you and working with you, I was even more excited because it's a nice energy. So thank you.
cool. So I'm excited to speak more about dreams. I know
Yes,
you're having your book out next year,
yes,
Dream Sight: How to Interpret Any Dream. So
yes,
we're going to talk about dream interpretation because you've been doing that for over 20 years, and I think you
yes.
can really help us individuals to make sense of our dreams. So tell us, how does dream actually work? How do you see dream? What is a dream?
Great question. And of course, it really depends on your perspective how one answers that, because the scientists will tell you that dreams are just random brainstem activity where the mind and the brain is processing information and creating memory and learning. And the mystic will tell you that it's this wide open soul connection where we connect to the divine. And, and if you go too far to that end, it's a little hooey hooey. I consider myself half scientist, half mystic, because I think both perspectives are important. It's very important for us to understand that there's something dynamic happening in the brain that connects to functioning and memory and process that is explainable with chemicals and neurons and all that other stuff. At the same time, this very mystical thing is occurring where we can connect our conscious human sort of mind activity with something much deeper that connects to the soul, that connects to the unconscious and the collective unconscious, where every human being is connected to each other, and something very powerful and divine is happening. And right in the middle is where I think the power of dreams lays.
So there's you followed the principles of Carl Jung, or this is the one you've really connected
Absolutely.
with?
Yes.
Why are the what, can you tell us what is the difference between
Well,
that and
let's just,
Freud?
yes,
Or
absolutely. Let's start with what Freud did. So,
yeah.
Freud was the first person who, after about 100 years of psychology and psychiatry emerging and discovering that there was this thing called the unconscious mind, Freud was the first person to create a structure of how we understand that unconscious mind that still survives today. And he was the person who said, oh my Lord, dreams are actually a root to this unconscious mind. He discovered that by expressing and discussing and describing the dream world, you could get glimpses into that person's unconscious mind. Where he got a little limited was he was obsessed with sex. He just thought that sex was everything, that there was one drive, and it was the sex drive. So he decided that if you dreamed about a mountain, it was a penis. If you dreamed about a tree, it was a penis. If you dreamed about a cave, it was a vagina. And that everything was just all sex, 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 sex. Now listen, sex is great and sex is powerful. Jung came along, and they connected Freud and Jung about this idea that dreams were a powerful route to the unconscious mind. But what Jung recognized that I think Freud missed was that sex was only one of the drives, and that in dreams you could connect to every element and aspect of the human condition in a much more sort of broad-based archetypal system, that sex was in dreams, that the survival instinct was in dreams, the aggressive instinct, the love instinct, the growth instinct. All of these were available in dreams, and Jung had a much more holistic approach, and that's why I responded to him much more greatly.
That is very, very interesting. So what are so there? So you're saying there's different symbols or different drives that we have to recognize, different to for us in order to for us to interpret dreams and navigate through those dreams.
Yes, that dreams offer us a snapshot into who we are in any given moment in our lives, as a function of the parts of us that we don't know about, that the hidden parts. What Jung brought to the table was this. This is very easy to describe in something that was shocking to him, was that when he went in sort of in the middle of his career, he went off to Africa. And when he did, he connected with some tribal communities in what was really then a very sort of foreign kind of world, this third world, inner sanctum of Africa. And he discovered that the tribes people were dreaming the exact same things that his upper middle class Swiss clientele were dreaming. They were all dreaming of flying, falling, being chased. The difference was that the African tribal members were being chased by, lions, and his Swiss, upper middle class clientele were being chased by bankers. but he got that there was the same thing happening in all human beings no matter what. So then you boil that down to the individual person dreaming, and you can understand that if we're all connected, if there's only one of us here on a spiritual level, that while we feel separate in our waking lives, in our dreaming lives, we're actually connected to every human being that's ever lived, that's ever living now. And then the dream life itself helps us identify the parts of our experience that would be otherwise hidden in our unconscious mind. So that if you're going through something in your daily life, and then a dream comes, you can use the symbols in the dream to help you understand what might be driving you that you can't see in your daily life. That the sort of hidden fears that might be operating, or the hidden benefits that might be sort of hiding out. Like we talked about a dream that you had the other day. And so the dream was very revealing of your journey. But we had to get to it. We had to interpret the individual symbols for what they might mean.
But I guess there's different types of dreams, because that
Absolutely.
one was pretty profound one, whereas the other day I just had this dream of I felt like it was more related to what I had lived during the day, which was not able to express myself or having to deal with volunteer work. Because in my dream there was 2 pages that were written on me on this community magazine, and I just didn't know how to tell them because they were doing this for free and doing this great. So I didn't know in the dream, how to just tell them that it should be set up differently. Like, it didn't felt for me appropriate. So this was related directly to that day. So I guess there's different levels of dreams.
Well, what I would say is that there's what I usually call is 2 circles of interpretation. There's the inner circle of interpretation, where a dream is a reflection of your unconscious mind and who you are and who you're becoming. And then there's the outer circle of interpretation, where it relates directly to your life and to your world. So that in the outer circle of interpretation, this particular dream that you just mentioned is absolutely sparked by a life event where someone or some organization was not quite lining up with what was true for you, and you had a response to that, right? Mm-hmm. But now let's take that one step back into the inner circle. You're undergoing or going through a process right now where you're really looking to find a sense of powerful integrity from the inner core of who you are, so that shows up in the outside world. So that this is a dream that reflects both the actual occurrences of they're not quite getting it right? But the dream is showing you your sort of relationship to when your integrity feels like it's out of whack. You get to see that more clearly now, that something isn't quite expressing the way you want it to. You're finding your voice. An example is that you might dream about going to the grocery store because you went shopping right before you went to bed.
Yeah.
Right? But then it's still a dream that can be interpreted for, are you nurturing yourself properly? Are you taking in the options of food and nutrients that are available to you? Are you buying fresh fruit or Pop-Tarts? So the dream is sparked by both the act of going to the grocery store, but it's also reflecting your relationship to nutrients. So this dream that you're telling me about right now is sparked by the experience of this written piece of material about you, but it's also giving you an opportunity to say, I take responsibility for how I'm being presented in the world. And if it's inaccurate, I'm looking for my voice, and I'm going to stand up for it and put it out there better today than I did yesterday.
So what are the different steps, or is there such a thing as a process to look at our dreams and find out what they mean and kind of get not the truth, but I feel like we're adding some stuff to it also. So how do we get really into the process of just the core? Is it such a thing as the core of the dream?
Yes, absolutely. There's a couple of things that are very important to remember when looking at dreams. And the first and foremost one is there is no wrong way
to
work with your dreams. No wrong way ever. Okay? I talk about a certain way of working with dreams that is what I do, because all I have is me, right? So that's what I sort of put out there. But I want to always make it very clear. There's no wrong way. Okay, and all have value. The other thing I'll say is that In the same way that scientists now know that we learn information by something that happens during REM sleep. I study for an exam, I go to sleep. In the REM dream process, that information is being put into my brain as new memory, and I wake up the next day and I can pass the exam. I believe that dreams on a psychic level or a deep psychological level is where we create wisdom about life
Mm-hmm.
so that we become wiser. Even the couch potato who does nothing but watch bad TV and eat bonbons is going to die wiser than they were born. And I believe that that wisdom process happens in dreams. So the point I'm trying to make is if you never paid any attention to your dreams forever, you would still get value out of them. So then there becomes this sort of tiered value of if I don't remember my dreams, I'm still becoming wiser by being a human being and just taking a breath. If I remember my dreams and I'm sort of sparked to think about them, I'm going to get more value out of them. If I remember the dream and maybe write it down and have a real powerful conscious memory experience of the dream, I'm increasing that value. If I share it with another human being, even just a girlfriend at lunch, I'm expanding that value even more. If I then take it to an even further step of processing the dream in some creative way, like drawing it out, writing a poem about it, dancing around the living room while thinking about the dream and acting it out, then I'm taking it to the nth level and I'm getting even more value out of it in that regard. So that what I do is help people cerebrally process the meaning of dreams through universality of symbols. That's one way. But ultimately, you want to be fluid and creative with it. And no matter what you do, doing anything is fabulous.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But once we have those elements, how do we interpret it? Is there some tips that you have?
Absolutely. What I believe about dreams and the symbols of dreams is that the unconscious speaks to us in the language of symbols.
Mm-hmm.
That actually everything that we do is really symbolic, right? You and I were speaking. We're speaking in a language. It's English. And you would appreciate this more than anyone because of your multilinguality, right?
Yeah.
So that I'm speaking words that are made up of letters, and the letters are symbols for sound. So there's a sound and then a symbol for that sound. We put those symbols together, and those symbols of sounds connect to a word, and I put a bunch of them together, and we're talking.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the unconscious mind is the same way. The symbolic language of the unconscious tells a story. And behind the symbols is meaning. And I believe that the way to figure out the symbolic meaning behind an image in a dream is to go to what's universal about that thing that is the symbol based on its use or its essence. So, for instance,
I'm going to ask you first, before you say that, to slightly come back towards in the screen towards us.
how's that? Better?
Yes.
All right, I'm fully present now. So, think about a refrigerator.
Uh-huh.
The use of a refrigerator is to keep a small space of air very cold. The essence of a refrigerator is to preserve something as long as possible. So that if you have a dream about a refrigerator and there's something in that refrigerator, the symbol of the refrigerator means I want to preserve this thing, whatever it is.
Uh-huh.
So say the dream is, this is an actual dream I use in my book as an example. A woman dreamed of finding a disembodied head.
Oh.
So, yeah, right? Scary, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Just a head. But the dream wasn't a scary dream. The head represented thoughts, ideas that she needed to preserve. Then we looked at the identity of the person whose head that was. It was a friend of hers that actually had a lot of capability in the world, someone she respected, right? So she was facing something in her life that she was having to make some decisions about that she wasn't quite ready to take on in a big way. But the refrigerator represented the ability to preserve the thoughts of someone in her life that really was a good, capable decision maker. And the disembodied head just connected to that she needed to preserve these thoughts that she could step into maybe in the future when she was a little more ready.
Okay. So how about for example, if we dream about babies?
Great, perfect example. Okay, I'll give you an example of an actual dreamer that where she got really tied up around this. She was dreaming of birthing babies and then murdering them. I guess Halloween must be on my mind. So she was dreaming of giving birth to babies and then she was destroying them in these really horrible, gruesome ways. She was terrified. She was terrified that the dream must mean that she was going to kill off her children when she became a mother, which clearly was not the case. But what are babies? Babies are the beginnings of life. So they represent the beginning of some new idea, some new project, some new direction in somebody's life. So when I introduced this dreamer to the idea of seeing the babies as new ideas, and that I asked her, what she was doing in her life where that might be so, she revealed that she was indeed a writer and that she was working on a project and that she kept having to throw away first drafts that weren't quite right. And every time she did, she had a dream about birthing a new baby and murdering it. Mm-hmm. So now look at the universal symbolic meaning of baby as new and having to murder. That murder was killing something off, and a death is always followed by a rebirth, right? Mm-hmm. So now the symbolic meaning of baby as new and a murder as a deliberate death followed by a rebirth was connected to every time she had to throw away a draft that she didn't like. Mm-hmm. She had to murder her own creations. Mm-hmm. Now, once she appreciated this dream, and this recurred every sort of 3 or 4 nights for about 2 weeks, once we worked together and she appreciated the meaning of the dream, not only did she stop having the dream, but the final draft idea emerged from her. Her unconscious was keeping her in a loop of not quite being ready to express itself until she was able to get that meaning out of the way.
Exciting. So death is actually when we dream of death, where it's something that is ending, or we have to come maybe to term with.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say death is one of the most exciting dream images I ever hear from. If somebody has a dream,
drowning or things like that.
Absolutely. How about drowning? Let's look at drowning. Death, we have already decided, is death. Death is always followed by rebirth. Always. It is the thing that must happen before something new can emerge. Drowning connects to water. Water represents emotions. We are, 80, 60, 70, 90% water? I can never keep track of how much water we are, but we're very wet. We're watery, right? And then when we cry, when we get very emotional, we leak water. Yeah. Sort of inexplicably. We cry, and it's like this sort of weird thing. So emotions connect to the loss of the primary thing that makes us up most, water. So that any dream that connects with water connects to our emotional experience. So if somebody says to me, I had a dream that I drowned, or that somebody drowned in my dream, I'm going to immediately go to death as something that's being sacrificed to be let go of so that something new can be born. And if it's a drowning death, I'm going to say this is an emotional issue. That leads me then to have a conversation with this dreamer. What's going on with you, dreamer, that feels very emotional and maybe sad or loss-oriented, where you feel like some old way is dying out and a new way needs to be emerged?
Can we bring back up dreams that we had dreamed the night before, or even just a few hours before, and change that or recreate it? I mean, can we work with dreams?
Absolutely. What you just described is called lucid dreaming. And what I would, some people are very gifted, naturally gifted at, and I don't know why this is, I'm sure it's got something to do with brain chemistry, where they can actually, I'm going to go back into the dream and then actually go back into the very same dream that they've just been having. So some people are not quite so gifted, and what I would say to those people, and I'm one of them, I've devoted my life to dreams, and I'm not a very good lucid dreamer, and then I'll meet some random person who's like, oh yeah, I lucid dream every few nights, and I'm thinking, how do you get to do that when I don't get to do that? But what I call petitioning dreams is what you're talking about. When I say, okay, I have an issue in my life, and I want some information about this particular challenge I'm facing, and I say to myself before I go to bed, okay, I want to have a dream that reveals more about this image. Mm-hmm. And then what I then have to do is I have to trust the dream that I've had, not to question it. Mm-hmm. So if I say I want information and then I dream about being, at the amusement park, and I think to myself, oh, well, that can't have anything to do with this issue because this issue is dark and scary. It's like, no, 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 no. Trust it. Work with it. What is the dream telling you? And then if you want more information, ask for more information. But trust the dream and trust that it really is illuminating the issue, even if it seems counterintuitive. I recently did this on the issue of judgment. I'm looking to have a better experience of my own life and my own consciousness. So I'm committed to releasing judgments, all judgments. And believe me, I'm a human being. They come up all the time, right? So I asked my dreams before I went to bed one night. I said, okay, hey, I want to be less judgmental. What should I know? You know, and I immediately had a dream that connected to my family of origin and them interacting in a certain way. And I was like, oh, right. This idea of being judgmental in the world does actually connect back to things I learned about the world through my family of origin that are probably not true, right? And then the next night I said, well, give me more information. So that night I had a dream about being electrocuted under torture.
Wow.
I was literally tied up. I was being electrocuted. Why? Because I had been involved with an insurance company fraud where I was taking money from people who were ill and profiting on that. Well, so what did I learn about myself from that dream? I said, my judgments are torturing me. And it's about taking advantage of others in a way that makes me feel. So what is a judgment? For me, a judgment is when I want to feel superior to somebody else because it makes me feel better. If I think, oh, you're awful because you lost your cool in the grocery store and I judge the judger. I was like, oh, what an awful person. That person has just been so nasty to the checker. Well, I'm really the one who's suffering there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this is the most recent experience that I had with this process that you're talking about. But it absolutely, at any given moment, you can ask your dreams to reveal some information for you, and then you just work with it and trust that it's really your unconscious speaking to you.
So you have little tips to remember our dreams?
There's only one thing to ever do to remember dreams, and that is to put a pad and a pencil by your bedside.
Mm-hmm.
And write down anything, even if you don't remember something the next day, even if it's just, I don't remember what I dreamed last night, or I remember something blue and fuzzy. What'll happen is your unconscious mind will respond to the physical act of putting pen to paper and will eventually reveal more and more. I had a woman that I met out in public the other day at a lecture, and she asked me that very question, and I told her, just get a pad, write it down. And she showed up at my dream circle 10 days later, and she had 3 whopping dreams. This is from a woman who said, oh, I never remember my dreams. In 10 days, she went from 0 to 60 just by putting the pad next to her. And the trick is writing anything down, even if you haven't remembered anything. Just write something down right away. And that's really all there is to it.
Mm-hmm. How about recurring dreams? How do you see that? I guess does that exist for adults? Because I know that exists for kids.
Oh, absolutely. There are 2 kinds of recurring dreams. One that I would call process-based, and one is, and that would be where, like, for instance, the woman I talked about, the murdering the babies, she had an issue coming up, and so a similar dream pattern hit her 1, 2, 3, 4 times. That's a moment where the unconscious mind is trying to get your attention, and it's going to give you a startling or an alarming dream image on a repetitive basis until you look at it. And the thing to do when that's happening is to examine your life at that moment and see if there's some pattern or some issue that's being sort of presented in your life that wants your unconscious mind's attention. The bulk of recurring dreams are the ones that someone has for their whole life. Mm-hmm. That's a similar theme. And those are anxiety processing dreams. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if you're always dreaming of being drowned in a tidal wave, that's tidal waves, again, water emotion. Tidal waves would be overwhelming amounts of emotion. And so this is a dreamer who has the brain is very economical. The brain will use the simplest, most direct imagery to explore or expose or express something. So that each person is probably got one image that works very well for them to provide an anxiety expression. So anytime that I'm trying to think if I have one
But
that's
is there different levels of quality of dreams depending on when we dream it? Because there is those dreams that seems more recurring, at least to me, when I'm just napping, and it's kind of like it's like this feeling of oh no, and then it's falling. And whereas if it's in the middle of the night, that might be different, especially in the morning when we get back into sleep. I mean, is there such a thing as different quality of dreams and
that's interesting.
different levels of your consciousness that you're then going into?
Well, yes, I think that with each successive REM sleep cycle that happens in a night, and you're going to go into REM from 1 to 5 times during the average night's sleep, and that with each cycle during a night's sleep, you're going to a deeper and deeper and deeper place, which is why the late night or early morning dreams are usually more memorable and more interesting and more divergent than, say, the earlier ones that we wind up not remembering. And then you bring up the idea of taking a nap and sort of going to this low-level dream of something sort of something that comes often. What did you describe? You just described it. That
It's always the same
being
room I get into, and then there's something that happens, and all of a sudden it's like, and then it's like the falling of like falling, but I'm
falling,
not
right, right.
falling, but it's just like of totally getting out of control. It's just like this it's taken by, and then it wakes me up, but that's
Right,
in a
okay.
nap time only.
That's in an app. Well, this makes a great deal of sense to me because the brain is very economical. And that dream of feeling like you're falling is your way that works well for Lilu to process the anxiety of being out of control in life.
Mm-hmm.
Falling is about control
Mm.
because it's not the fall that kills us, it's the sudden stop. And
Mm-hmm.
so if we're in a place where we're falling, that means we don't know where we're going to land, we don't know when we're going to land, we don't know how we're going to land. So since every day of life can give us opportunities to feel frightened about being out of control, this image is a really economical way for your brain to process the regular anxieties of just being alive. So that if you just go into a light REM sleep in a nap, you're going to go right to that place of how am I going to process the anxiety of being alive so that I can wake up from this nap and face the day. So that's the standard easy place for you to go, and it's helpful. It's helpful for your consciousness and your unconsciousness to work together so that you can be more effective in life. You're going to go there right away on the early sleep. But then when you go into several REM sleeps through a night, you're going to deeper wounds, deeper unconscious places that need a little bit more creativity to be expressive. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So that, yes, I
Mm.
would say that in the recurring dream that you've had throughout your life, you will have this dream of falling for the rest of your life. It's a good way of you processing fearing being out of control.
So do you recommend naps?
Well,
I
I
mean, do you recommend
love
as a
naps.
dreamer?
Yes.
You're funny.
Okay, so what I hear the question.
Do you recommend as a dreamer? I mean, do you even take some time during the day to go and nap? I'm talking of dreaming.
Right, right. I'm gonna have to switch
Sleep.
hats here for a moment because the hat of, Michael, I
Yeah.
love naps. Naps are just the best. Here's what I would say. If I'm really gonna be serious for a minute, I really gotta rein this in. All right. Does Dr. Michael recommend naps? Here's what I'll say about that is I recommend having as vibrant a relationship to your dreams as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
And if you dream when you nap, utilize it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Even if it's just for a moment to say, oh, wow, I fell again in my nap dream. Okay, I can be in control of my life or feeling, whatever. Even if it's just to acknowledge it a little bit. So yes, the answer would be Dr. Michael Lennox approves of napping, especially if you take the opportunity to spend even 30 seconds after your nap with your dream. And one of the things I like about working with Freeman around dreams is that I'm the dream guy and he's the coach guy. There's a lot of the ways our work parallels and comes together is that he loves to talk about and encourage people to be with the visceral feeling of the dream.
Yeah.
So I would say that if you have a dream when you nap, the best thing you can do in that moment is to take a moment before you get up and rejoin your day is just sort of be with the feeling of the dream for a moment. Just let it vibrate over you and then move on with your day.
Awesome. Great advice. Wow. We're so blessed right now to have you. And I have another question because it came up the other day. I
Yeah,
was interviewing Jonathan Ellaby, and he was speaking how vividly in his dream his wife, his future wife, showed up. And he had all the elements and all the information.
I
So
love
how
it.
is that? What's happening
Okay.
there? What is he tapping
Well,
into?
I'm covered with goosebumps. I'm covered with goosebumps because here's where it's beautiful for me to be half scientist and half mystic. On the mystic side, I absolutely understand that life is far greater on the invisible side than the visible side. What we see in our daily life is just nothing compared to the vastness of the energetic experience of being alive. And in the dream state is our most powerful access to life as sort of invisible and the borders being sort of blurred between one day and the next. Time doesn't really exist. And we have the capacity in the dream state to reach back in our lives and forward in our lives. And if somebody like this person that you're referring to has a willingness to experience what might be coming around the corner, in their waking life, in their dream life, then it's absolutely possible to connect to something that hasn't shown up yet, like a partner, and sort of visit with them before they've even arrived. I'm fond of saying that you can't pull a rabbit out of the hat unless there's a rabbit already in the hat. I absolutely believe that the rabbits in our lives that have not appeared yet, they're in our hat if we just would look. And the hat is best accessed, I think, through the dream state because we're not encumbered by our conscious minds and our ego minds that tell us, oh, that's not possible. It's not possible to imagine our beloved before he or she shows up. But I believe it is. And what I would say, I don't have any information about this man at all, but I would say that because when the first dream occurred to him that connected him to his beloved, because he held that in a divine way, then more dreams showed up connecting him with his beloved. If he had dismissed that first dream as just a dream, his unconscious
Well,
wouldn't have. Oh,
the next day, I'll send you the link because it was during an
please.
interview. And the next day, he was on the Freeman's show, but on the next day, he looked up on the internet. He has so much information on his dream about this woman. He looked out for her, could not find her, but then 3 months later, they met and they were exactly that. I mean, she was exactly that person, that woman, and he knew immediately.
Perfect. So here's what I would say about his actions the next day. This is a perfect example of dream work. It doesn't matter to me that the next day on the internet didn't yield any results. What matters to me is that his unconscious mind went knock, knock, knock. And the next day he decided to say, ooh, who's there? Like a knock, knock joke. By going to the internet and looking her up. By doing that, he absolutely joined his unconscious mind's desire to reveal the life that was unfolding and his conscious mind's ability to receive it when it arrived.
Mm-hmm.
And I would posit that when she did show up 3 months later, he knew who she was by virtue of that dream and what he did the next day. Maybe he would have connected with her anyway. But let's, for shits and giggles, let's just decide for a moment that his respect for the dream actually let him be that much more open 3 months later when she actually did show up, that he was present for that moment, which was already the rabbit in his hat. He was present for it, open to it, and he saw her with great clarity. And that's what led them to become beloveds, because he was prepped and he honored his dream for being able to give him that experience.
So would you say that we have to welcome that relationship with dream and incorporate that in our life, and it's a great, great tool to
I
have?
I think you just used a whole bunch of words, Lulu, that are perfect. Welcoming them, and they're a tool. So the answer would be yes, 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 and yes. And one of the beautiful things about dreams is that they're free. They're right there. So any spiritual practice is a function of learning tools and picking them up, right? You know that you teach this. So that dreams become one of those opportunities that require nothing but respecting them. And you can take them, yes, to greater lengths. And people that I work with, yes, we do drawings, we do rituals, we do all kinds of things with our dreams to increase the value. But remember what I said earlier, it doesn't matter what you do, just having the dream is enough. And that there's no wrong way to work with them. So as a tool, there's something wonderful to just add to your toolkit without having to worry about, oh, am I doing it right? Or is there some,
But I really hear about the relationship between the dream and I. Like really, like if it was a person, like really encouraging it and nurturing it and committing to it and welcoming it, all of that.
I'm so touched by you putting it in terms of a direct relationship, because ultimately that's what it is. And it is the embodiment of having a relationship with ourselves, which is what all spiritual practice is designed to do. And that when we have a relationship with our dreams in that way that you just described, that it's personal and it's intimate, it's like having a beloved experience with yourself. And when you do that, when you open yourself up to your dreams as powerful and intimate and generous, you're increasing what is available in your relationship to yourself. And I think the dreams respond. That's why I think dreams go. I've had people that I've worked with, or people in the media that I've been done their shows, where they get mad at me almost because of how vivid and powerful and enormous the dreams become after just talking to me once or twice. Because it's like, oh my God, they're so full and they're so rich. But how beautiful is that?
So I have a last little question for you.
Yes.
Do you think life is a dream?
Oh, I hope so. I hope so. I do. I do think that that's a beautiful question, Lilu. I think that when I consider the possibility that this life that I'm living is a dream from which I will one day wake up, then everything that I've experienced along the way that I've judged as too painful or too difficult or challenges that I would rather not have faced, it all becomes moot and irrelevant. I think, what a beautiful dream. What a beautiful dream. And I do think that if we are bigger than this human body-bound experience, that the spirits that we are went to sleep just before my first breath, and that I'm having this dream, and then when I take my last breath, I wake up from this dream, and this life has been so extraordinary. Imagine how extraordinary we must be in order to be having this life as a dream. What could be better than that?
Thank you, Michael. That was such a delight to spend this moment with you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. To each other, and something very powerful and divine is happening. And right in the middle is where I think the power of dreams lays.
So you followed the principles of Carl Jung, or this is the one you've really
Absolutely,
connected with?
yes.
What can you tell us what is the difference between that
Well,
and
let's just,
Freud?
yes, absolutely. Let's start with what Freud did. So
Yeah.
Freud was the first person who, after about 100 years of psychology and psychiatry emerging and discovering that there was this thing called the unconscious mind, Freud was the first person to create a structure of how we understand that unconscious mind that still survives today. And he was the person who said, oh my Lord, dreams are actually a route to this unconscious mind. He discovered that by expressing and discussing and describing the dream world, you could get glimpses into that person's unconscious mind. Where he got a little limited was he was obsessed with sex. He just thought that sex was everything, that there was one drive, and it was the sex drive. So he decided that if you dreamed about a mountain, it was a penis. If you dreamed about a tree, it was a penis. If you dreamed about a cave, it was a vagina. And that everything was just all sex, 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 sex. Now listen, sex is great and sex is powerful. Jung came along, and they connected, Freud and Jung, about this idea that dreams were a powerful route to the unconscious mind. But what Jung recognized that I think Freud missed was that sex was only one of the drives, and that in dreams you could connect to every element and aspect of the human condition in a much more sort of broad-based archetypal system, that sex was in dreams, that the survival instinct was in dreams, the aggressive instinct, the love instinct, the growth instinct. All of these were available in dreams, and Jung had a much more holistic approach, and that's why I responded to him much more greatly.
Hello, Dr. Michael Lennox.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good day.
It's great to have you. I love your energy.
Thank you. I love yours as well.
I really appreciate meeting you through Freeman Michaels.
Yes, and I did too as well, and I was excited beforehand, and then after meeting you and working with you, I was even more excited because it's a nice energy, so thank you.
Cool. So I'm excited to speak more about dreams. I know
Yes.
you're having your book out next year,
Yes.
Dream Sight, How to Interpret Any Dream.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about dream interpretation because you've been doing that for over 20 years, and I think
Yes.
you can really help us individuals to make sense of our dreams. So tell us, how does dream actually work? How do you see dream? What is a dream?
Great question. And of course, it really depends on your perspective how one answers that, because the scientists will tell you that dreams are just random brainstem activity where the mind and the brain is processing information and creating memory and learning. And the mystic will tell you that it's this wide open soul connection where we connect to the divine. And, and if you go too far to that end, it's a little hooey. I consider myself half scientist, half mystic, because I think both perspectives are important. It's very important for us to understand that there's something dynamic happening in the brain that connects to functioning and memory and process that is explainable with chemicals and neurons and all that other stuff. At the same time, this very mystical thing is occurring where we can connect our conscious human sort of mind activity with something much deeper that connects to the soul, that connects to the unconscious and the collective unconscious, where every human being is connected.
That is very, very interesting. So you're saying there's different symbols or different drives that we have to recognize, different for us in order for us to interpret dreams and navigate through those dreams?
Yes, that dreams offer us a snapshot into who we are in any given moment in our lives, as a function of the parts of us that we don't know about, that the hidden parts. What Jung brought to the table was this. This is very easy to describe in something that was shocking to him, was that when he went in sort of in the middle of his career, he went off to Africa. And when he did, he connected with some tribal communities in what was really then a very sort of foreign kind of world, this third world, inner